opening, and then we'll just get started. And here we are back on another Future Forward episode with a live feed, and we have a lot of content today. We do.
So much content because we have so much time, right? So much time on our
But
hands.
but but this is going to be an optimistic show. You know, if you're looking for pessimistic, grim content, you can dial in elsewhere, because the mission of this episode, Future Forward 112, was to find things to share with people that will help people connect with how they're best managing this, what was originally called social isolation, and now they have another, like, some version of conscious uncoupling, whatever it is. So Alexa pulled some clips, I pulled some clips, and we thought we would just talk you through the ways that people are finding to connect digitally using technology and humans across the interwebs. And we found a lot of really good stuff. It's strangely cheerful. So and by the way, all these links we'll put up in the show notes. So don't feel like you have to try and chase after us for those of you who are listening on the podcast. But we will not resort to visual stuff. We will also have audio as well. All right. So let's begin with this piece from Vox Recode: how older people can use tech to stay healthy and connected while avoiding coronavirus. Um, I picked this mostly because I just like this picture of people shopping. Um,
Right.
um, but let's just talk through kind of what we found in this article, and then we'll zip through. We have a lot of links. We have a lot to cover today. So you know,
So what's interesting is I hear older people, and I think everyone has like a different mental model of what old is. So when you hear older people can use tech, who are you thinking of?
people in their 90s, 100.
Yeah, same. I'm thinking of like my grandma who I just spoke to, and there's no way she's doing any of these things. She doesn't even have internet in her house.
Oh, you should fix that. She has no.
She doesn't want it. She doesn't want it. And it was interesting talking to her today because she said she's obviously nervous and anxious. Like she said, I am so happy that everyone is focusing on family and togetherness and staying in touch, and people aren't, going off and hanging out with friends, and that everyone's just returned home to their families.
Does that mean her phone is ringing a lot? Is that what that means?
Yes. Yeah, she's like, I mean, I'm calling her more, my brother's calling her more, cousins. So I think she's but it's phone, right? She doesn't have a smartphone, she doesn't have internet and so fast.
Um, my experience, I've never been a Facebook or what do you call it, FaceTime person. I don't know why. I
Hmm.
find it a little uncomfortable. I don't, and so watching Zoom kind of creep into all of these parts of our daily life, and trying to understand the politics of when the camera should be on and when it should be off, and when I have to be present and the camera has to be on, is definitely. I mean, I can see. I'm not quite at your grandma's level of technophobia, but I'm probably somewhere on the Richter scale.
Oh my, far from it.
Yeah, I know.
You produced the
Yeah,
entire
fair enough.
show.
But like, so we've talked about your teams. You've worked on distributed teams more than I have. Like, are you always on camera when you're on a distributed call?
I'm eating lunch and I'm just gonna turn on.
Um, so basically, the Recode Vox piece was talking about essentially uh, seniors using technology to stay in touch, but then also, at least in my neighborhood, there's a whole thing kind of forming around special hours at the grocery store for seniors.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep, 7 to 8 at ours.
I mean, I think some of that comes from we really don't quite exactly know what safety is at the moment, but we know it probably isn't being in big crowds of people.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. I can tell you though, I've done a grocery run. It's
all right. So, by the way, just to give our listeners an update of what we're going to cover on this pod, we've picked a bunch of categories. We're going to do cooking. We're going to do learning. We're going to do reading and listening. We're going to do watching, what people are watching. Then we're going to do exercise and health. And then we're going to end with dating and relationships in the new separate world. So let's move along on the cooking quadrant because there's a lot of cooking stuff, some of which I found. Let's start with quarantine pizza, shall we?
yeah. So I love this, and I chance to quarantine pizza session, which is basically a virtual pizza making class. Chef Colin Bixler. Proceeds benefit the Food Bank of New York, but there are two pizza sessions scheduled for the 23rd and the 25th. And so if you want to partake, quarantinepizza.splat.com.
So I just have to say, looking at the quarantine pizza, it looks really delicious. Um,
Yeah.
I do think food takes a larger portion of your daily life when you're trapped indoors. There's the cooking of the food, and then there's the eating of the food, and then there's the cleaning up after the cooking of the food. And this can be a significant portion of your evening if you time it right.
I'm exhausted. I mean, the actually last night I said we have to do takeout because I feel like I've been in one not cooking and cleaning at
So
home.
what did you do for takeout?
We went to this like Korean barbecue bowl place around.
And you ordered and then waited in the barbecue bowl place, and they handed it to you.
Ordered it, waited outside, and there was actually a happy hour across the street, cocktails to go. So it was like a drive-through window with 6 feet distancing in between people. So you could get a margarita in a to-go cup, like a plastic cup. And then so we got one of those and then we waited for the food.
Okay, so this is me now sounding cheap, but when I do the math between what a bar, like I understand why bar drinks are expensive because you're paying for the ambiance and all the cool people and the music. But when you're getting a $9 margarita in a to-go cup, I would think a bottle of tequila and some margarita mix might go a lot further.
So we have like a home bar cart. I think for us it was 70 degrees yesterday. It was nice to just
Yep.
be outside because we hadn't
Yeah,
left the apartment. And we also are making it a point to
that's right.
support local businesses. This bar literally opened 2 months ago. And so we're already getting GoFundMe's and emails from places that are closing down or are raising money for workers. So
All right, so let's move on to
the
quarantine
support.
baking. Um,
Oh yeah, Eater had this great article. People are stress baking and just sort of and there are lots of links even within the article like there are recipes that are going viral too, like this shallot is sort of making its rounds. So there are even like trendy recipes and a
So
whole
I made a
series of
cheesecake.
you
I'm
can
not sure if it counts as stress baking, but I really did enjoy making it, and I'm very much enjoying eating it. So uh,
is that something you would normally do or this is like a
I'm expanding my baking horizons. I did a banana bread the other day. I had I had a dozen bananas that I'd mistimed the banana purchasing cycle, and so I had 12 or 8 soon to be rotting bananas, and I'm like, they were just calling out to me. They wanted to be banana bread, and so yeah, and it was quite delicious. All right, so what do we have next in the food category?
nice to have
Uh,
to send you
um,
that's it. We have
yeah, we
learning
do we
next.
do. Um, so there's a good piece about what does Zoom mean for NYU. It's interesting. I've I tested 6 or 8 different digital learning platforms when we were moving the Media Lab Combine program over to video, over to web, and you know, Zoom is not the fanciest, and it doesn't have the most kind of like clearly academic. It doesn't have like whiteboardy. It doesn't. It's a little bit more of a. But I can't tell you exactly why. But it's just the most solid and kind of accessible. Everyone seems to get it. It doesn't require a
Yeah.
tutorial or a like. Whenever I go to a site and I want to consider using it, and it says sign up here for the free demo or for, and they won't show you the product or the pricing until you have to have a tour. I'm like, nope, nope,
Hmm.
not
Yep.
not not working for me. Um,
It's very accessible, but then once you actually have a pro account, there are some power features and there are a lot of different settings too, if you want it to be.
um, so it's interesting. For example, so NYU has uh, um, I don't remember what it is. Gmail and Google Pro, whatever the paid G Chat features are.
Oh, the Meet,
Yeah,
Google Meet.
and yet they went with Zoom.
Hmm.
So it makes you
It's a Brady Bunch mode. That's the thing. That's like the killer feature that is so easy if Google just implemented it. You know that little like box in the corner where if you click it, then everyone's faces show up?
So did you make that up, or is that like a? Can I credit you? Is that Brady Bunch mode? Is that your?
That's what I call it. I just like
I'm
I don't
gonna
know what
I'm
else
gonna
is my favorite.
I'm crediting you. That's an Alexa. That's an Alexa name because it's definitely Brady Bunch mode for sure. Absolutely.
Mhm. And it makes all the difference, right? You don't want to keep seeing people in a strip and
Nope.
scrolling.
Brady Bunch mode. Definitely work. It's also nice to know how big the room is, and in fact they've
Hmm.
added, I think, or maybe it was there. There's a feature that will only show you people that are video, so you don't get lots of black boxes of people that are. It's like,
Yep.
look, if you want to lurk, then lurk, but we're not going to feature you as a black box with your name on it.
Yeah.
So the rumor is that there is actually, if you get into the weeds, there's an HTML access where you can actually change the background colors of your Zoom environment. You can do a logo at the top and all this stuff. I've yet to figure out how to get into it. I spoke to
Mm.
Zoom
Well,
about it. They were very nice. And they said I had to have a vanity URL, which I had to get from NYU. So
okay. Well, you have time to figure it out.
well, we have a
I
big
believe
event
in
next
you.
Friday, so I was hoping to have a Media Lab branding wrap around it, but we'll see if it
Branding.
gets done. And then we have a big public event. We're doing a big, demo day in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks. That also has a big audience following. So hopefully by then we'll have it working. Um, all right. So
Nice.
so for those of you who don't know, Zoom is we recommend Zoom. This particular video podcast is not produced on Zoom, although theoretically it could be. We use Skype for Alexa to come in, although I suppose that could just easily be a Zoom screen grab frame as I think about it. All right. Anyway, moving on because we got a lot to cover. Um, so I really like this inside a higher ed piece. Will the shift to remote teaching be a boon or bane for online learning? Um, I think it's easy to say online learning, terrible COVID virus is going to reimagine how we all interact. But it's getting online learning is getting mixed early reviews.
Right. I mean, it's almost like it's just going to exacerbate or the organization pre-COVID. If you had sort of a digitally savvy workforce and you had an appetite for change in from faculty and administration, like there's yes, all of this is going to accelerate and accelerate the adoption of online learning. But if you have a very I guess, skeptical cohort or of stakeholders, yeah, this is then just going to be another excuse to say like back to business or business as usual after.
I also think I happen to have a college senior in my family, and a bunch of my friends are parents of college seniors. Um, they're it's going to sound spoiled, and I don't mean it this way, but there's a certain bitterness. Particularly, you were coming into the very end of 4 years of hard work. There was going to be a graduation. There was going to be, you know, whatever the college version of senioritis is, a lot of drinking and partying, and it's like to have the last two classes of your senior year be online um, probably sucks a little bit.
Well, I mean, you're taking away the experience, the full college experience of being away, of being with a community in a physical space. Um, yeah, I mean, there are scenarios where I think at the undergraduate level, there's a lot. I think there are certain graduate programs where there is sort of like a simulation component to learning. So, for example, Matt's mom she teaches nursing, and so she does simulations. Like, if you want to be right, you need to actually go through what it's like to deliver a baby. How are you going to do that on Zoom, right? Normally, people are in a lab and they are like dummies and sort of different simulations that are run. That for me is like the clearest place where the curriculum is actually
Well,
compromised.
perfect example of that at NYU is the ITP program. So ITP is physical
Mm-hmm.
computing. It's building devices,
Yep.
building objects, 3D printing. So all of a sudden, ITP's labs have shut down and are closed.
Mm-hmm.
And all these students that, paid a lot of money and also were expecting physical computing experience are now sitting watching professors online. That being said, we have at least three programs
Yeah.
running at the Media Lab that are extraordinarily. I'm overwhelmed by how successful the students are being in challenging circumstances. Um,
Yeah.
so I think for some people, it's like, yeah, well, And by the way, here's a thing. Another thing that listeners may not know because I didn't know it. So Google Hangouts theoretically is the same or the same ish as Slack, but it's not at all.
No.
Um, so I'm now on 4 or 5 Slack channels, and
Mm-hmm.
they're all different organizations, they're all different conversations, they're all different tenor. But I finally said to the NYC Media Lab team, we got to stop using Hangouts and just shift everything to Slack. Um, and can you explain? Is it technically different or just vibe different?
Oh. Uh. I mean, I'm sure the way it's made is like it's designed to be um outside of the Google suite, right? And there's so many ways that it's a more open system. So for example, if you have vendors or agency partners, you can actually invite them as guests into your Slack channel to different conversations, right? That's something that you can't do in Google.
Now, theoretically, um, Microsoft Live, like Microsoft Teams, which was built to be the.
Mm-hmm. Everyone.
According to my friend Brian McCullough's podcast yesterday, the numbers are through the roof.
Yeah, because it's like a lot of like old school or large enterprise just forcing it top down.
Interesting. So it's not like the Slack people aren't worried. Stuart's not worried.
I mean, Microsoft is, you can't dismiss sort of the marketing power behind it and the fact that folks who are working in the Microsoft suite are going to sort of be pushed into the Teams product. Um, but again, I think the what's analogous is sort of thinking about Microsoft,
Oh,
right? Like once upon a time, everyone was using Word.
yeah. When I get sent a Microsoft Word doc that I have to work in, my immediate reaction is that I'm pissed off.
Yeah, so that's sort of what we're at now. It's like, sure, Microsoft's really dominant. They can basically roll out Teams, but I really, if I had to put money on it, I like
Have you
Slack.
used
I
Teams?
like Slack's chances. I've seen Teams. I've not used it at work, but I've seen friends' Teams
All right.
instances run.
Uh, all right. Moving on. Next link. Um, changing federal rules so colleges can survive and thrive. Um, I guess I didn't understand that there was, I mean, of course, nobody's busier in the last 2 weeks than the lawyers, right? Just by way of example, I heard that
Mm-hmm.
part of why we weren't getting masks to doctors fast enough was because the big companies in the U.S. that manufactured construction masks, the N95 masks that could have worked fine, were not going to ship them. They weren't considered medically stable, and so they wouldn't ship them to medical institutions because they were afraid of liability.
Yep.
So the Congress had to add something in one of the rescue acts that essentially said 3M's allowed to produce medical masks, and they're not going to be held responsible. Um, so that was news to me that there was a liability
Yeah.
concern, but of course that makes sense. So
Yeah. I just thought this was like a complementary link to in this debate about whether there's a boon or a bane for online learning. There are all these regulations and accrediting bodies that dictate schools can officially operate online. And so even when it comes to schooling international populations for you there are limits right now in place with regards to sort of who can teach who online. It's not like Harvard can say, "Hey, we're going to take our whatever program and then teach it online," and then all of a sudden like someone in, can just start taking the class.
I didn't know that. This is all of your online education background coming to our.
Well, I mean, it's related to things we've talked about too, which is like a boot camp that's teaching a coding class can't all of a sudden just say, "Hey, we're operating right." We did that article on Lambda School,
Yes.
right? So there are all of these rules and restrictions around how schools should be operating, and so I think there's this question now around whether again, I took a cocktail to go last night, which would normally not be legal. And the law was amended to basically help accelerate, flowing to small businesses and bars. And so now there's this question in higher education, which is, should policy actually help enable schools to be and accessible?
I guess one of the questions is which of these things, once we get through COVID in 60 days or 30 days or 90 days or some number of days that are more than we could possibly imagine, like will cocktails to go remain a law, or will it get rolled back to no, you have to be inside the bar?
I hope not. I mean, what I hope we're learning through some of this is like we necessary restrictions we were placing on ourselves.
So the two, by the way, I've had a cocktail to go. Now that I think about it, a million years ago, when I was in New Orleans, there was a cocktail to go window.
Minor laws. It's a state by state thing. It's just in New York, we've never had it. I mean, I've had friends get tickets at the Halloween beer in a brown paper bag.
Yeah, that law has to go.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on and talk about libraries. So this is our reading and listening section. You have good experience here. So it's funny. I thought I'd read that the New York Public Libraries were allowing all this online access so that people could read and get books and borrow books. But then I went looking for the links to back that up, and I had trouble finding them. So the article that I ended up putting up is a Washingtonian article that talks about D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, and our listeners are from all over the country, so good for you if you're in one of those markets. But tell me about the service you use.
So there's an app called Libby. Basically, type in your library card, and it gives you access to all of these books. And just like a library, there are digital copies available to borrow. And so what you can do is you can set up an entire queue, say like 20 books, and then as they become available, then it automatically downloads. And then also, just like a library, like a physical copy, you have to return it. But the best part is, uh, you don't have to physically do that. It'll give you like a 3-week window to finish a title or whatever long, whatever period of time.
So, at the risk of oversharing on the podcast, I don't currently have a library card.
Oh, you should get one, but you can sign up for one online. Go to New York Public Library, and you, as long as you verify your, I forgot what the process is because it's been a while for doing that, but then they will send you the digital library card code that you need to enter into Libby, and you can get started.
So I'm gonna do that as soon as we get off, and I'm gonna share the links in the show notes with everybody. Um, but like, is it auto magical? Will it happen in a minute, or does it end up taking, like, I don't like.
It's probably like, again, if you go to this, you can.
Well, assuming that people are working at the New York Public Library.
Well, I think I want to say it's been so long since I've actually done the process, but I just remember doing
All
it
right.
in a day.
Well,
And I'm, I don't know about the New York Public Library, but Brooklyn Public Library, you basically also have access to lynda.com, which was acquired by Microsoft, and that's a ton of um, skills
wait,
related
so
courses: photography,
acquired by
Adobe,
Microsoft and now
Photoshop.
inside LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah. So LinkedIn acquired lynda.com, and then Microsoft acquired LinkedIn. So it's a Microsoft owned entity.
All right. So audiobooks or audio. So Audible, which is owned by Amazon, seems like this is a theme of our show. Everyone's owned by someone. Oh, hold on, we're making noise. Oh, come on. Somehow I got Star Trek playing. Okay. Um, um, Audible to provide free audiobooks for children and teens during COVID-19 pandemic. So that's a good thing, right? How is this not just a great big smiley story? How does it work though? Do you have to prove you're a child?
Yeah,
So you have
usually.
to for as long as schools are closed, we're open. Audible says. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I've
You can you or a school alias if you're registered, and
so
so
so I've been in and out
that's
of
how they
Audible a
verify.
couple of times. For reasons I don't fully understand, I find their kind of all you can eat quarterly billing cycle thing. Like, I really want to buy audiobooks and not have to be on a, like, I don't like the pressure of, oh, I'm paying $13 a month. I really ought to listen to a book. Oh, did I listen to a book? Like, I find that stressful. Um,
Yeah, I hear you, but I know some folks, like my dad doesn't read. He only listens to audio.
does he commute?
No, but he like goes on walks and he takes road trips, and he just like audio guy. He'll like listen in the shower. He just audio
That's really
guy.
interesting. So my question is about this Audible thing. Like, I'm not a student, but I am, an NYU teacher or administrator, and I teach. I wonder if I can go and I wonder how it will treat me because it says for students.
make the ton your .edu
Yeah, we should
email
call this
alias.
podcast the COVID-19 Perks Cast. The good news is,
There's one
the
good
bad news
to
is the
come out
economy
of
is going to
this,
hell in a
right?
handbasket. The good news is free books. Yeah, I don't know.
Right. Well,
Um,
everything's tanking except for
yeah, is
Amazon
that true?
stock.
Yeah, I guess that's true. All right. So speaking of which, let's talk about the streaming wars. This is a CNBC
Mhm.
article, and I could, if you chose to take pro, I could take con. I think I could go on either side of this one. Um, um, so the question is, coronavirus quarantines could be the perfect backdrop for HBO Max, Peacock, and Quibi to join the streaming wars. What do you think? We need more. Nah.
Nah. Nah. I just think there are already so many choices. Like you know me, I'm like a subscription junkie. So between Disney Plus, Prime Video, Hulu, HBO, Showtime, and then I have access to my parents even download apps like ABC and watch TV live. Like I don't even know how I can like fit into rotation. Peacock? Nah.
So my friend Brian McCullough, who does the Tech Ride Home podcast, said his numbers have dropped dramatically because his podcast was specifically structured around being the thing you listen to during your commute. And, I think it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Theoretically, work from home, you should have more time. But like, I think about the podcasts I listen to on a daily basis. In the last 2 weeks, I haven't listened to either of them. Not because I don't have the time, but because it doesn't quite fit in with my stay-at-home rhythm. Um,
Well, I think that's what we're all trying to find, right? Which is what does this stay-at-home rhythm even look like? I mean, there are days where I date
yeah,
it.
Saturday feels a lot like Friday. It sure does.
Yeah.
Or Friday feels like Saturday.
Um, it's not a link, but I think what is interesting, I'm curious to see what the numbers will return. All of the movies that were going to now available for like $20 to stream at home. Have you done any of those yet?
Nope.
So the newest Pixar movie, Onward, is available. Emma also released 4 titles, I think, if you go to Prime now as a sort of the distribution platform that's doing this. Um, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because you would normally pay in New York City, say $17 for a movie ticket. And
And then,
so
I was
now
there
you
the
can
last
watch
time
it.
I went. Popcorn is now $100.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, it's because of the social distancing. They have to actually sell you 2 seat. No, I'm kidding. I'm making all this up. Sorry.
Yeah.
Uh, I
So
think the
funny.
big question, HBO Max is a spinoff from HBO. Peacock is NBC. Quibi is a standalone. Um, and
Yeah, they're the ones who spent all of that money at Super Bowl time.
and and they've you know have you seen a sample of anything they're making? Have you seen like a trailer or
No.
no?
Have you? Everything was everything old is new again. I think all of the streaming services remind me of people like you went from like a handful of channels to then cable, so then you have like 100 channels, and then you have satellite, and it's like 800 channels, and you still find yourself scrolling.
Yeah. um, I think I think the thing about Quibi that makes the if I were you know Jeffrey Katzenberg sitting there trying to make a decision, um, I mean, really nothing has gotten launched in the last 2 weeks, with one exception. Strangely enough, Apple released
Westworld.
a whole bunch of new hardware,
Mm,
and
yeah.
and it made me feel good.
Hmm.
And I was trying to figure out why it didn't make me feel like they were being opportunistic or icky, or like why didn't they dial? Like nope, something about like, the world may be coming apart at the seams, but Apple still has a new iPad.
Yeah. There are a lot of interesting articles.
Yeah.
We could talk about that next week.
All right. So Quibi, I think the jury's out. We won't say anything else about them. We want them to do well, but definitely not the ideal time to launch a new service, I would say. All right. So the next is an article from Media Insider, where some overblown columnists decide to write about apps that provide calm. Okay. Truth be told, it's me. I wrote the article. Uh, I wanted I
I was trying to
yeah.
keep a straight face. I was like,
I wanted to, I've seen these apps. I've never used them, but I was like, you know what? Everybody's freaked out, and they don't have that many people near them. If they're lucky, they have, one or two people in their apartment, but they don't have their extended community is all digital, whatever. I was like, let's see if these things work, and it's interesting. I mean, it's
I've used three of them: Inkscape,
uh,
Headspace, and Calm, like premium versions.
um, because you're in search of the perfect holistic.
Uh, Super weird. My friend's the CTO of Inkscape, so he's like built the app. So full disclosure, hi Kazra. I had developers who worked on that product, and then Calm, my friend was like an investor in it, so he recommended it. So I have like weird knowledge of this digital meditation wellness
So
space.
before I wrote the article, I did a survey of among the people I know that have used it, and the most positive feedback was, interestingly enough, Insight Timer. Yep.
Interesting.
Um,
I could see that. I mean, some of it is like it's my guess is maybe it's the least has the least number of like
I
bells
don't
and
know.
whistles.
I mean, and then the only one that there's been any medical testing on is Headspace, which was positive but early. Um,
Well, did you see the original when the you should go back into the archives. It was born out of a TED Talk.
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that, but what I would say to our faithful listeners is, if you haven't tried any of these, because you were too busy, you didn't have time, you have no excuse.
Literally, I
You
have
have
no
no
excuse.
excuse.
And I can tell you the three that I've tried are great. They also help you sleep. They help you do sound baths. They're like, again, there's so many different uses. I can't meditate. I mean, that's actually this is the best time to give it a try, which is, can you slow down and can you train your brain to work like a muscle where you can actively get it to stop? Races, if it's all over the map, meditation is a great thing to just practice. And that's the word I use intentionally, because you have to work on it. If you don't, you'll never reap the benefits.
All right, so listeners, it's in the show notes. They all have free trials. There's no excuse. You got to download. All right, we got a bunch more links, so we're gonna have to zip along. Otherwise, we'll be doing our. All right,
Yeah, we'll be here
so
all day. Great.
um, there's a yoga app called Down Dog.
Yep. They actually have a portfolio of apps like yoga for beginners, down dog. So you found that in school recommending yoga to deal with
Yep.
COVID anxiety. And so as someone who practices yoga, I know Pam teaches yoga. It's good. We can't really get the same amount of steps in that we would normally do. So it's something you do in your apartment. There are tons of resources like apps, YouTube videos. I attended a live stream the other day, 40 people. Dude, it was cool. You're not getting like the in-person adjustments, and you're not sort of hearing the breathing of the people next to you, but in terms of coming together in a shared experience and just sort of, I don't know, collectively acknowledging that we're all in this together, it's a pretty powerful experience.
There are a lot of choices. I'm not sure we're going to recommend one today, although I was awfully fond of Down Dog just because it was downdogapp.com, which made me smile. All right, so moving on. we've got a couple more yoga links. Yoga Vida.
It's just a local studio. It's just one of many examples out there of studios that are really feeling this because they're in the business of bringing people. They're moving to digital formats, and so I have dozens of yoga links in my inbox of studios that are or are taking your $100 a month yoga membership, making it like a reduced fee to access premium content.
Yeah, I think as I imagine it going forward, I'd like to see the video quality. I mean, the fixed position camera is great, but I would definitely like to see those classes with either a handheld um, or a some kind of a gimbal based camera that's got a little bit more motion in it, so that you feel like you're not just watching one person head to foot the whole time. But that's nobody's doing that yet. It's still they're all pretty consistent. The one that you did
Yeah.
with 50 people in the room, like how did you end up watching the teacher, and like was it done like a webinar where the main camera was?
Mm. So I'd say it's hard to, I mean, if you're practicing yoga, then you already know what the poses are, right? So in some ways, it's just about the sequence of them.
Interesting. Um,
Yeah.
all right, so we got through the Harvard Medical School recommendation. Um,
Sources out there.
how does that work in real life?
What
Well,
part?
it's been a long time since I've been out on a date, but it would seem to me that like hanging out with somebody on video chat without, I don't know, physical dynamics, I just think it would be hard to get to know if you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been for years now. I just think it's now out of necessity. And what's more interesting to me is just general connectedness, right? The article you pulled, 10 apps to hang out with friends in VR. I actually haven't tried any of these. I'm curious what the rate is just because I don't know. Like, it feels like we're living in an alternate reality. I don't think I need a virtual reality. I think I'm okay just having like a general screen and seeing my people face to face.
Yeah, I think this is another whole conversation, but it's like definitely headgear is not sold. You finding three friends that all have some VR helmet they can wear, I think would be challenging unless unless they're gamers. So
Right. Yeah. Um, but there's like a great article in the New York Times, Tales of Quarantine Socializing, and this not just seeing employees at companies adopt Zoom, you're also seeing Z room every day at 8 p.m. with like 30 kids, and they're just like hanging out.
yeah, it's Gen Z. I don't know. Um, Gen Zoom. Um, so here's what I would say as we wrap up this live and also taped podcast. We should figure out like what the right rhythm is for us. I mean, we can keep going weekly, but I certainly like this conversation. I thought it was interesting, and oh, here's an idea. Maybe if we could figure out when people were watching live, we can invite guests in. I
Oh,
wonder now,
totally.
now that we've got
Yeah.
the audio NDI source thing working.
We should just segments.
That's a good idea. And then they could present it, and we could
Hmm.
interview them. All right, but with that, our time has come to an end. Um, we're going to wrap this show up, and all of the links will be in the show notes. And if we missed anything huge, let us know, and we'll try and get to it next week. And until then,
Yep. Stay busy, stay safe.
see you in a bit.